Once a month or so, wine expert, sommelier, and businesswoman Mireille Sauvé stops by the studio with a few bottles of some kind of mysterious local or imported wine. Today she is in the mood for sipping sherry, Spanish sherry. It is my pleasure to welcome Mireille Sauvé back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Thanks, Fanny.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
You look in a sherry frame of mind.
You know, I feel like I'm in a sherry frame of mind. All of a sudden the weather's getting a little bit cooler. It's time to have something a little harder in the way of wine.
Why Spain?
Why Spain? That's a good question. Spain, actually, this sherry is from the south of Spain, which ironically is summer all year round. But it seems to be more of a fall type of drink because it's fortified. So they've been making this for centuries, and they do a fantastic job. You can see the array of sherries that we have here to try today.
I can smell the array of sherries.
Very aromatic, yes.
Very aromatic. Fortified means what?
It means that they've actually added a spirit to it. So it's a brandy that they add to it to make it just a little bit stronger, and it adds complexity to the flavor. So it's a really unique beverage. I'm sure you've heard of Harvey's Bristol Cream. That's sort of a very popular sherry, and many people sort of say, oh, my grandma used to drink that all the time.
All of our grandmothers drink sherry. I don't know why. It was to get them through canasta. Or bridge.
That's a good reason.
It was an excuse.
And a lot of people still do that. Still a very popular sherry. But today I've brought you some very different sherries. So none of these taste anything like Harvey's Bristol Cream. There's so many different types of sherries, and you can just see by looking at them.
Sure.
There's
so,
a big range.
But it starts like in a winemaking process when do you call them?
Bodega.
Bodega?
That's the sherry house. That's like a winery, is a bodega.
A bodega, and is it like going to Mission Hill or Quail's Gate?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about sherry that makes it unique to anywhere else in the world is they have something called the Solera system. And it would take you an entire show for me to even begin to explain to you what exactly a Solera system is. But it involves aging. It's a continual process of aging the wines in these big oak barrels that form sort of a pyramid in the winery, so that every time you take sherry to put in a bottle, you take it from a little bit of every year. So it's a blending maturation process that's very complicated, but it gives this wonderful consistency to the wines.
So if you can make wine, if you're an expert in making wine, is it more difficult to make sherry or easier?
It is more difficult in that the investment to have the winery is quite high, because you have to have a lot of wine in order to constantly be blending wines from year to year. Some of these bodegas, this one here that we're going to try, actually, we've got a 30-year-old sherry here. And what that means is not that the wine itself is 30 years old. It means, because of the Solera system, that the wine in this bottle comes from comes from barrels that are at least 30 years old. So many of these go up to hundreds of years old, the Solera systems.
Oak barrels, stainless steel barrels.
Oak, always oak.
Only oak. Have the sherry makers gone to screw caps yet?
No, you know, it's funny, I actually went down to Spain a little while ago, and I was doing a certified sherry certificate there. And I asked a lot of the wineries, why aren't you going to screw cap? And they said, we're Spanish. Cork is one of our major economies. We have to support our economy.
Okay, but do they make sherry in France and sherry in South Africa? And
well, sherry's a bit like champagne that way. You have to be in sherry in order to call it sherry. So there's actually the sherry triangle, which is 3 different villages in the south of Spain, and you have to the wine has to be cellared in that area in order to be called sherry. And it's because there's a certain humidity that encourages something called flor. It's a special type of yeast that only, and especially for these white sherries here, that particular type of flor needs to be made in the sherry triangle. It's the only place on earth that can do it. I see,
because if you are not drinking champagne, if you're not drinking French grape champagne, you're drinking sparkling wine.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's start with the weight.
Okay.
Why not?
That's a great idea, Fanny. I love the way you think. There you go. So this is the Manzanilla. It's called La Gitana. La Gitana is the name of the winery. And Manzanilla, so you notice the color here is quite white.
Right.
This is a very dry wine. So there are a couple of types of dry sherries. Fino and Manzanilla are the dry sherries. These go great with Manzanilla olives, ironically.
Of course that makes sense.
Is it just a coincidence?
Yes. Lovely smell. And is this a proper sherry glass? What kind of glass is this? So you spit.
I do spit, especially when it's full.
I know. Well, because I'm thinking I get a little tipsy on sherry. does it have more
is
alcohol?
Stronger, yeah. It's 18–20%, somewhere in there. So yes, you have to watch how much you're consuming because it is very tasty and tempting to drink too much.
But this would be dry as opposed to...
It's a great aperitif. This is bone dry, so when you try it, it's like a very dry Sauvignon Blanc. And it does go really, really, it's amazing how much this wine tastes like Manzanilla olives. In fact, it's got sort of an olivey, briny sort of a
I better have a
flavor to
tiny
it.
sip.
You should, you really
Just really
should.
tiny.
It is
because
the
I'm
end
not
of
going
the
to
show,
spit
right?
on television. Because I haven't practiced like you have.
Excellent.
What do they call it at a tasting, at a sherry tasting? Not spitting.
They do call it spitting,
Do they?
actually. Yeah. We're a matter-of-fact bunch.
I guess.
We
so
call it
that
what it
is
is.
dry. So you should have an olive.
You should have an olive.
In case.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes. So that's a great aperitif. It's something at the start of an evening. It's really nice to serve on a hot summer's day. And I love Fino sherries especially, which
What does
is
that
sort
mean
of like
again?
It means dry.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
Fino
the white
means
dry sherries.
Okay, and the color is important. And when you make tasting notes for sherry, you do the nose is this or what?
Yeah, you do eye, nose, and mouth. And that's a good idea anytime you're tasting any wines. But especially in sherry, you can see the difference in colors depending on what the wine is. So the next wine that we have here is...
I'll have a little water now.
You need some prawns.
Might be early for sherry.
The next wine here that we have is an Oloroso. So this is getting a little bit darker on the spectrum of sherries. And the Oloroso, you see it's got that caramely color. It also has a very caramely flavor. Still a dry sherry. So you notice
more
on
depth or something, perhaps.
Yeah, and on the nose it does have almost a perception of sweetness on the nose.
Yeah,
and
little American oak, a little something.
You
12
do get
years.
an oak.
12 years this has been aged, you said? Something like that?
Sorry, not this one. The next one is a minimum of 30 years.
Okay, minimum 30.
But this one does have wines in it that are easily going to be 100 years old.
And so as you nose this, what do you say? Smoky, what?
Yeah, a little bit caramely.
Caramely.
Smoky, a little bit toasty. And see, now when you taste it, you do taste those things, but it finishes dry. It's got like that
So
really
are you
dark
telling me
toast.
I should do this again?
I think you should.
Okay.
I'm a bad influence.
I'll have to
on
call
you,
a
aren't
cab.
I, Fanny? I'll drive you home afterwards.
I'm taking little tiny
So now
bits.
this is the type of wine that you want to have with something like sausage.
Ooh.
And this is a jamon sausage, so it is actually from Spain as well.
Jamon spelled, because it's Spanish, spelled with a J, I bet.
That's right, it is, yes. And it's very traditional in Spain. So protein is something that really goes well with the Olorosos. So
like
having
tapas.
Tapas,
of
exactly.
tapas.
Spanish meatballs. It's just such a great thing. If you go to Spain, actually, in the south of Spain, and you go to a tapas parlor, they'll serve you all sorts of yummy little proteins, and they will always serve you Oloroso.
See, and these hors d'oeuvres are so easy. Like whether you're having a wine event or a sherry event, a little salami, little sausage, some beautiful olives, and some nuts. You're done.
Exactly. How easy is that, right?
And no crackers.
No crackers unless you want to cleanse your palate between.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
So
This is the little something that comes out of the cellar very rarely. This is called a Palo Cortado, which is the same color as an Oloroso, but it's quite rare. And this one here is from González-Bias. And it's called VORS. And I'll actually show you the back of the bottle here. There's a little symbol there that says 30 VORS. And that means that the wine in here has to be aged a minimum of 30 years, which makes it very special.
And probably very expensive.
And more expensive, but,
But
you know
maybe
what?
not.
I'm glad you brought that up because sherry is one of the best deals in town.
Okay,
All of
so-
these wines are, you know, they come in different sizes of bottles. So if you equate them all to a 750 ml bottle, which is this one, they're all going to be under $40.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Well, I cook with sherry all the time, so I can probably buy better sherry to cook with.
You probably can.
Put a splash in the stew.
Yeah.
Or a big splash.
I really like cooking with Amontillado, which is the one that's sort of between Oloroso and Fino.
Okay, what's it called?
Amontillado.
Amontillado.
It's got a beautiful flavor to it.
Okay.
But go ahead and give this one a try if you will. This is the
See?
very rare VORS. We like to say it stands for very old rare sherry. It's actually
And this is
Latin
30-year
that it stands
aged.
for, but yeah, minimum 30.
Of course, I'd like that one.
Yeah, see how it's got that smoothness and the finesse?
Yes. And it's not too sweet.
No, not at all. No, we're still in the dry sherries.
Okay. I'm so glad I said that.
Have an almond if you will.
Okay, I would. But I might choke.
We don't want
on
that.
TV. No, okay, so what's this one called? Gonzalez?
The Gonzalez BS.
Okay.
That was the Apóstoles, which is the
Okay.
Palo Cortado.
Right.
Palo Cortado is the type of wine. Gonzalez BS is the name of the bodega or the winery that makes it, and Apóstoles is the name that they've given that particular bottle.
Okay.
So lastly, I'm bringing you to the very sweet sherry. So you remember we were talking about Harvey's Bristol cream.
Look at the color.
Well, that's sweet, and this is sweet for all sorts of different reasons. It's called Pedro Jiménez, which is actually the name of the grape. So most sherry is made with a grape called Palomino.
Right.
But this is made with Pedro Jiménez,
So
and they
what
also call
makes
it PX.
Don Guido from Spain? This weighs a
It's a
ton.
really heavy bottle.
Why is it so heavy?
It's just thick.
No kidding.
They want you to keep it for a long time.
I guess so. But what's the difference between a dry and a sweet? What do they do differently?
Well, with this one, actually, they take the grapes, and they use a different kind of grape, so they're naturally sweeter. And they take them and they dry them on straw mats, and they let the sun come down and just dry these grapes.
So
and
it's
they
a
kind
dried
of
fruit
them.
or a dried raisin or
And that's why when you
cranberry or-
swirl this in your glass, you'll notice it actually leaves a film of color. That's how
kidding.
thick this wine is.
So would you, I'll let Cam get a good picture of that. Yes, would you serve this with dessert?
You know what? I actually often serve this for dessert. So my favorite thing to do with this is drizzle it on vanilla ice cream.
Oh.
And then pour a little bit in a glass on the side.
Oh, right.
It's delicious. And they do this in Spain a lot as well.
Okay, and because I know you have chocolate here.
We do have
And I
dark
was
chocolate,
thinking,
and PX
wow.
goes very well with dark chocolate as well. So any type of bittersweet, semi-sweet, darker type of chocolate.
Temperature-wise, how to serve a sherry?
Okay,
Chilled,
so
not chilled?
for the white sherries go very cold. So I actually like to have them in an ice bucket.
Okay.
And really good, again, with manzanilla olives, with prawns, lighter fare, ceviche, that type of thing. When you get into the Oloroso and the Palo Cortados, the orangier, more caramely sherries, you want them to be just slightly cooler than room temperature, as though you had just pulled them out of a wine cellar.
Okay.
And great with red meats and proteins and pork sausages, that type of thing. And then you get into these dessert sherries, like the PX, and very cold, once again, just right out of the
Okay,
fridge.
and once opened, how long to keep a sherry?
Again, a beautiful thing about sherry, because it's fortified, it has more alcohol. Alcohol acts as a preservative for the wines. You can keep it in your fridge with a cork on for months. and
Okay,
it
like
will
a
still be
good
delicious.
brandy or a...
Or a port.
port.
You treat it basically as a port.
Really?
And this particular wine is great next to a fireplace at the end of the night. You don't have to have it with anything.
Well, I hear we're going to have to do that soon. I thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you
to
very
interrupt
much.
your drinking.
That's, please.
Thank you.